Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Good morning or good afternoon to everybody. So, pleased to introduce the first keynote speaker of the conference, Guillaume Soudin. So, Guillaume has been
Alors,
working,
bonjour
I
tout
think.
le monde. Good morning.
Whoops, I heard myself and everything's okay. Okay, so Guillaume has been working since 2006 as a software and an electronic hardware expert within certification department of the European Aviation Safety Agency, the EASA. This is a very this is a very important conference, since basically what we are trying to do in mobility from the perspective of AI. If Guillaume said that this is not a good idea, we are going to go nowhere. Okay, so I will have to point out that he is also in charge of many committee related to how to introduce artificial intelligence in aviatic in the aviation possibilities. I think also that Guillaume, you in another life, you were a software engineer in the development of automatic flight control system. This is another life, of course, because it's way before AI. I think it's around the year 2000. But nevertheless, I think you have really a good way to see what are the challenge that we have to encounter in mobility AI, and how we have to see the problem from the EASA point of view. So, Guillaume, please. Oh, just a minute. If anybody has a question, then so please just put the question in the chat, and I will relate it.
Many thanks, François, for this introduction. So good morning and good afternoon to all of you. So my name is Guillaume Soudin. I'm software senior expert at EASA, and I am glad to be with you today. And it's an honor actually for me to be a keynote speaker in this great event. Before entering in the core of the AI trustworthiness subject, I wanted to share with you some news from the EASA AI roadmap. The first roadmap deliverable has been published on the 21st of April for a 10 weeks public consultation. And this EASA concept paper introduces a set of first usable guidelines for level 1 machine learning applications in line with the AI roadmap timeline that you can see on this slide. The goal of this document is twofold. First, to allow applicants to have an early visibility on the possible expectations of EASA with respect to implementation of AI and machine learning solutions. And second, to establish a baseline for level 1 AI applications that will be further refined for level 2 and level 3 as we ramp up to these other levels in 2022 and 2024. This is only a first milestone in the implementation of the EASA AI roadmap, but I have to confess that this is a major step for the EASA AI project team that was created a bit more than a year ago with a mission to implement the action plan from the EASA AI roadmap. This achievement could not have been done without the tremendous work within this AI project team, and also without the support and contributions of a large number of EASA stakeholders. And I really thank everyone that was involved in this release. We are looking forward to receiving comments, of course, from all aviation stakeholders who will be using this guidance in the future, but also more largely from the AI research community, as well as from the fields who are dealing with safety-related and safety-critical applications, such as automotive, railway, maritime, but also the medical and the nuclear domains. The document can be accessed directly on the EASA website. Putting /AI at the end of the EASA Europa EU address leads you directly to the EASA AI roadmap webpage, under which an article contains the concept paper, a comments response document, and a functional address at which you can send your comments back. So you can all be part of developing the future safety-related AI guidance. So again, feel free to send all comments you may have. The main driving question behind this work, behind the EASA roadmap and actually behind the overall EU strategy on AI is how can we reach an acceptable level of trust in an AI-powered machine? Beyond my pragmatic engineer conviction that we will find ways to answer this question to an extent sufficient for enabling AI approvals in aviation or in other safety-related domains, I realize that there are different ways to address this question. It actually ranges from the beliefs from some people that so-called intelligent machines should not be trusted at all, as they may one day endanger humanity, to more pragmatic views, for instance, that we humans are too bad drivers, so that machine will anyway cause less accidents if we let them drive for us. And this debate will go on. And in our quest, we should always keep in mind the warnings of our predecessors. But one thing is for sure, our efforts will be oriented by one key word, that is trustworthiness. And whatever the methodology we finally come up with when certifying AI solutions, we will be successful only if we manage to create a chain of trust throughout the full life cycle processes of a product embedding AI. That is to say, from their development to their operational usage, and taking into account, of course, their maintainability. Such a chain involves a wide range of actors, such as the data scientists, the developers, the suppliers, the product manufacturers, the cert authorities, of course, the maintenance operators, and also the end users. And at last, the public who is flying worldwide. So to paraphrase, one key certification requirement that we use in aviation, we can succeed only if convincing all of these key actors that we developed methods and means that ensure an adequate level of confidence that the machine will perform as intended under all foreseeable operating conditions. To explain how EASA intends to address the major challenge of ensuring trust in AI solutions, I will attempt to provide you with our first answers to three top-level and very major questions. The first one is how to build public confidence in artificial intelligence. The second one, how to enable the certification of disruptive AI solutions in the heavily regulated domains, such as the aviation domain. And the last, what are the key challenges that are raised by this rapidly evolving field of computer science? To look at the first question, how to establish public trust in AI, three major dimensions need to be accounted for when trying to answer this question: the technical dimension, the ethical dimension, and the AI trustworthiness concept. To start with the first one, the technical dimension, end of 2018, EASA launched a task force on artificial intelligence to evaluate the impact of AI on all domains of aviation. I had the privilege to lead a small team of 5 people who came up with the version 1.0 of our EASA AI roadmap early February 2020. The first takeaway of this task force was on the clarification of the scope of the roadmap. AI, as you all know, is a very wide term that encompasses many techniques, and the technique that really matters for the time being is deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning. This is the main driver for the scope of the first version of the EASA AI roadmap, but of course, and we will have to revisit those assumptions and update the roadmap as new use cases and new developments in the field of AI are coming in. The second takeaway is that the impact analysis that we performed in all impacted domains of the agency has brought us rapidly to one essential conclusion. All domains, whether it is design, production, air operations, traffic management, maintenance, training, or even environmental protection, share the same statement of issue. We are lacking means of compliance for approving machine learning solutions in safety-related applications. And whatever the domain, we determined that a common ground exists that was used to orient the creation of the 4 roadmap building blocks that I will outline a bit later. Finally, a third takeaway of this task force exercise is that we will be dealing with different types of AI, depending on the nature of the interaction with the human. We split the types of machine learning in 3 levels. Level 1 considers AI assisting and augmenting the human performance. Level 2 deals with the task sharing, where AI becomes more independent, but still under the monitoring and control of the human. Level 3 implies more autonomous operations. It may not necessarily be fully autonomous tasks, but human would not directly be involved in the operations. This leveling drives the timeline of the roadmap, as you could see on the previous slides, and a stepwise approach that has been selected to address one after the other these 3 levels of AI and machine learning. Each step will come with its set of challenges and surprises, for sure. And this year, we are focusing our effort on the level 1. Coming to the ethical dimension, the EASA AI roadmap is driven by a human-centric approach to AI. As the famous French writer François Rabelais wrote in Pantagruel, science without conscience is nothing but the ruin of the soul. In other words, progress without considering its ethical impact can only be detrimental. This is one reason why the European Union develops a human-centric approach to AI, and this is a key driver for our EASA AI roadmap. We have a long history of automation in aviation. For instance, in the air operations domain, with the appearance of jets, aircraft automation developed more and more to better assist the crew. In the 1950s, if we look back, the classical arrangement to cope with the crew workload was 2 pilots and 1 flight engineer, and for long-haul operations, a navigator, so 4 in total in the Western world, whereas it was even more in some other regions of the globe. This arrangement prevailed until the 70s, where due to modern navigation technology, for instance, with introduction of inertia platforms and later on of gyro laser platforms, the navigator disappeared from the cockpits. In the 1980s, the cockpits were all digitalized. The planes could be certified worldwide with a minimum flight deck crew of 2. When the crew is facing repetitive routine tasks, automation by unloading the pilot can increase safety. Since the end of the 50s, planes land safely in degraded weather conditions thanks to the intervention of advanced automation. This history at EASA always drove us, and in general in the aviation domain, always drove us taking into account the technical, social, and environmental impacts of automation. And it's today an integral aspect of the current regulations. But the use of AI techniques could bring us even further. We can reasonably think that autonomous commercial air transport will be technically feasible within the next decades. However, how far it will be implemented will also depend on the societal and political acceptance. Whatever the pace of this evolution is, we are convinced that the human will continue to remain at the center, AI being a tool at its service. This is the direction we took along the development of our roadmap. There are different aspects to consider when talking about AI and ethics. And as a starting point, we ensured adherence to the 7 ethical guidelines that were published by the EU Commission high-level group of experts couple of 3 years ago, actually now. These guidelines introduce important principles like privacy, data governance, non-discrimination and fairness, or transparency, and to an extension, explainability that will apply to all implementation fields of AI. These ethical guidelines will surely require further adaptations as the Commission progresses in the development of the regulatory framework for AI. This brings us to the heart of the EASA roadmap, the AI trustworthiness concept. The roadmap from EASA identifies 4 building blocks which are necessary, and we believe at this stage could be sufficient to deal at least with level 1 applications and possibly, and we will see, with level 2 and level 3 of AI. The first one, the first building block, AI trustworthiness analysis, serves as an interface with the EU ethical guidelines that I just talked about. The ethics-based assessment introduced in the EASA concept paper consists in a translation of the ethical guidelines from the EU Commission high-level group. And the EASA concept paper makes a first mapping of the ethical questions raised by the introduction of AI technology, clarifying their applicability and their traceability with the other building blocks where practicable. It's also a gate to perform dedicated safety and security assessments in view of identifying the safety and security requirements for the specific AI application. And to a certain extent, it is the block that helps characterizing the AI application in a way that with the potentiometers that you can see represented here on the picture, you can tune the applicability of the other more, I would say, more technical building blocks. The next two blocks, the learning assurance and explainability, have the ambition to open as much as possible the so-called AI black box. The last block, the safety risk mitigation, considers that we may not always be able to open the black box to the extent required. The safety risk linked with the inherent uncertainty of machine learning models may need to be accounted for and mitigated. The development of these four elements as part of an agency-wide policy form the backbone of the AI roadmap. In summary, we believe that once the safety, security, and ethical aspects of an AI application have been accounted for, the application characterized to an extent where we know how much of the remaining guidance is needed, then we'll remain to ensure the assurance in the learning process, the explainability of the AI, and an adequate level of safety risk mitigation. And that could be necessary, or that will be necessary, and that could be possibly sufficient elements to reach an adequate level of confidence to certify that AI solution. I will now walk you through the three essential AI trustworthiness building blocks, the last three technical ones, which will support answering the second question I raised at the beginning of the presentation, how to enable the certification of AI solutions. Learning assurance is intended to cover the paradigm shift from programming to learning, as existing development assurance methods are not adapted to cover learning processes. To outline this novel assurance method, we created a W-shaped assurance process that provides a solid basis for EASA's guidance for machine learning and deep learning applications. It builds on the traditional development assurance frameworks we use for system certification and visits all the stages of a learning process. Below the dotted line that you can see on the screen starts the specific learning assurance framework, starting with a key step of data management, followed by the learning assurance process and its verification, and then moving on the second part of the W into the implementation of the learning model so that it can be integrated and finally verified. Of course, the safety assessment process is integral to all of these steps. And we closed the W with a step of independent data and learning verification as an independent step to close the very important steps of data management and learning management. In fact, the W, as you can see here, is a double V, one for the learning phase, a very iterative aspect of the learning process, and one for the implementation phase. In order to progress in the characterization of the different steps of this assurance framework, we have launched successively 2 innovation partnership contracts together with the company Daedalin, a Swiss-based startup that is specialized in computer vision solutions for aviation. The second IPC is currently in short final, and we plan also to start such projects in other domains of aviation soon. In the EASA concept paper that you can read and provide comments on, this W cycle is clearly the basis for the development of a first set of objectives, top-level objectives, I would say, with the anticipation of certain means of compliance, but that's really the beginning and not the end of this part of the document, in order to develop this assurance, learning assurance block in the AI trustworthiness concept. This block will also require further investigation in the verification methods. For instance, in particular, the use of formal methods can provide better guarantees on the robustness of a machine learning model to perturbations. These are really several research paths, I would say, that we need to undergo in order to provide better verification means to perform the different verification steps of this W cycle. We come now to the explainability building block. The statement of issue is that even with the highest level of data management and learning assurance, intuitively, we can sense that a human interacting with a machine will need something more to be able to trust it. This is where we felt the need to add explainability as a separate building block for the future guidance. We all made the experience of poorly predictable automation, and you may have dozens of such examples in mind. And what at this time you would have expected from the machine. Explainability is a concept that is resolutely human-centric. It deals with the interface between the AI-based system and the human operating, overseeing, or developing it. It considers that AI outputs to the human will need to be relevant and understandable, and that its behavior will need to be predictable in order to foster the trust by the human. Although explainable AI is already a broad area of research, a precise definition of the objective behind this concept did not appear to exist at the time we prepared the EASA AI roadmap, and we therefore had a try at providing a first definition that we refined slightly when working on the building block. From our perspective, explainability is the capability to provide humans with understandable and relevant information on how an AI/ML application is coming to its results. The explainability building block is paramount for the acceptability of AI in aviation. It's designed with the necessary objective of maintaining trust of all stakeholders involved during the whole life cycle of the AI-based system. By doing so, it also contributes to the safety of the operations. Considering that explainability highly depends on the recipient of the information, the guidance introduced in the concept paper covers, on the one hand, the development and post-operation phases of the life cycle, and on the other hand, the operations focusing on the human interacting with the AI-based system as an end user. If focusing now on the levels aspects, focusing on the level 1A, machine learning application, that is to say an AI assisting in a sense of augmentation, the human. The human here remains fully in control of the operation and of the decision making. As the level of automation remains limited at this level 1A, the explainability may possibly be limited to an assessment of the human-machine interface. This is our assumption at the moment in time, and we will investigate the generalization of typical human factors assessment that are performed in product certification today. Now, if we imagine ramping up to a level 1B or even further to a level 2, where the collaboration human-machine goes one step beyond, the machine taking over certain tasks in independence, but still in interaction with the human operator. In such a case, one can feel that although that can be already extremely complex, the traditional automation assessments would not anymore be sufficient to deal with the complexity and the bidirectional nature of the human-machine interaction. And that's where we will need to develop novel ways of performing human factors assessment and create probably new types of analysis focused on the machine and its interaction with the human. The level 3A applications will also come with a different need for explainability, as the human will be only supervising the operations, for instance, of a fleet of drones. The complexity of the explainability is on the capability to provide situational awareness to an end user who is overriding operations that he was not involved in. There is a parallel here to the issue of a self-driving car, for instance, which would rely on the driver to take control in situations where the level of uncertainty is too high to continue the autonomous operations. This is a very difficult problem to solve and raises the questions of providing the right level of awareness to the human facing increasing levels of automation. And the last step is to level 3B of AI, for now at least. That is to say, to autonomous machines, where the human is not anymore in the loop of operations. And it seems even more as science fiction when we look at it from where we stand. In large commercial air transport, based on the current industry roadmaps, we should have enough time to deal with this change in paradigm. But if we think about the drones market, for instance, or the urban air mobility market, we will be pushed to resolve this paradigm probably much sooner. This is a great challenge in front of us, and we are delighted to tackle it together with our industrial partners. I'm coming now to the last of our building blocks, the safety risk mitigation one. The AI safety risk mitigation block is anticipating the difficulty in some use cases to fulfill the provisions of the learning assurance and explainability building blocks and the related objectives. This is translated for the time being in two simple objectives of residual risk identification and residual risk mitigation. In the initial phase of development of our means of compliance for AI solutions, this building block might well be focused and based on traditional mitigation means, as we know them in typical applications today. But this block is meant to evolve as the rest of the guidance is developed, and it may even take a much more novel touch when refining the guidance and adapting it to further developments in the field of AI. But we are not there yet, and let's be on the safe and proven solution side when dealing with such essential safety block in the first applications. So this brings me to the other question, which is what are the next challenges ahead? The concept paper that we published is the beginning of the journey and really not the end. And to provide a quick answer to this question, the guidance contained in the first EASA concept paper is part of the answer to several of the challenges that were initially identified when performing the task force and discussing with all our partners. But when developing this guidance, we have identified a number of remaining challenges which will require further research and work. And the first ones I wanted to talk about are the ones related to the means of compliance, to this learning assurance building block objective that I introduced just before. Starting with the first one, even if this building block is the most advanced part of the guidance at the moment, the compliance to certain objectives that address certain properties on the trained model, like the generalization guarantees, the bias and variance trade-off, or the model robustness, are extremely dependent on the chosen model family and on the model complexity. The anticipated means of compliance that we drew in the concept paper and that were identified so far are meant to be generic for a machine learning solution. However, some of them are surely more specific to the deep learning and computer vision use case that we used from the Codan IPC side, and it would require adaptations to other types of models. Some may also lack scalability, some of the anticipated means of compliance, when the input space dimensionality is getting too large. Such objectives on the learning assurance also trigger the need to deploy novel means of verification, as I already said. And we are looking at the use of formal method as a promising path, but other approaches could also make use of adversarial networks, for instance, as a means to verify or even to monitor independently AI applications. But they are also use case dependent, and neither of them appear yet to be mature enough to provide a compelling basis for means of compliance to a certification framework. Another question is how to use and inject the results of the learning assurance verification back into the safety assessment. As presented with the AI trustworthiness analysis block, the system safety assessment is a key entry to characterize the AI application and to tune the other building blocks to reach the right level of confidence in the AI model. This is, of course, the part of the guidance in which the safety objectives are defined, but also where the metrics used to evaluate the performance and the guarantees provided by the AI model are defined. Under specific conditions, certain guarantees on the trained model can be given. However, with the current state of the art, these guarantees can be reached only for a given model family. This restricts the capability to draw direct conclusion on the meeting of the safety objectives for the specific model chosen and selected to be implemented, and requires additional considerations, in particular on the side of architectural mitigations to reach an adequate level of safety. Another issue lies in the quantification of uncertainty. We may have trained perfectly a machine learning model and provide very good generalization capabilities. Still, the capability to cope with the unforeseen conditions may remain a challenge. This needs to be accounted for in safety analysis, and we could benefit of other domain approaches like in the automotive domain to enhance our methodologies on this aspect. Another learning assurance challenge ahead is that in its current version, our concept paper deals only with supervised learning techniques. Although EASA did not yet receive applications involving other types of learning, discussions with our industrial partners show that they are also knocking on the door. The case of unsupervised learning techniques, for instance, could be very useful, for instance, in anomaly detection. Why not in the maintenance domain? Also, reinforcement learning opens very interesting possibilities that we can see in the field of computer gaming, and that could open really very promising use cases also for aviation. Both of these techniques raise, however, questions on the data management step and surely add additional complexity on the assurance that complete and representative data was used for the training. We will be dealing with them progressively based on the use cases proposed by our research and industry partners. Let's now move to another group of challenges that is focusing on emerging trends in the field of AI for aviation and for the other safety-related domains. The first one is about adaptivity. It's a planned extension of the scope of the roadmap and of the guidance. And it's it's an interest for certain type of application to continue training a machine learning agent in operations. This is the definition that we gave to the term adaptivity in our roadmap. This is also sometimes called continuous or online learning strategies by in other domains or field of research. This may not be used upfront in safety critical applications, as it is recognized by the industry stakeholders that freezing a machine learning model at the time of certification is a must if we want to ensure adequate guarantees from a learning assurance perspective. However, if we think of other domains such as maintenance, production, fleet management, the number of data to process is increasing dramatically every day, and retraining models on the basis of the new collected data might be a crucial business advantage. We have already identified some interesting use cases in the field of maintenance in parallel to the work that we already launched on the 4 EASA AI roadmap building block that you can see in the guidance concept paper. We will evaluate what it takes to enable the introduction of adaptive or continuous learning in safety critical applications. Another extension, anticipated extension of scope to the roadmap is about rule-based AI. The current version 1.0 of the EASA AI roadmap focuses on the machine learning subset of artificial intelligence due to the nature of the applications that we received so far. We are, however, getting an increasing number of signals from our industry that the use of rule-based AI does matter when getting towards decision-making capabilities for AI-based systems. And in this respect, the use of hybrid AI, the mix of data-driven and rule-based approaches, could be a promising path to take advantage of the mixed benefits of both approaches. In this respect, EASA is planning an update of the roadmap probably early next year to account for the development and widen the scope of the existing guidance. The path to more autonomous operation is another challenge in itself. The term autonomy comes from the Greek autonomia. Autos means self and nomos means law. So it defines someone or something that gives itself its own laws. If taken literally, we see that it would apply only to very advanced types of automation. And we are not even envisaging them from an AI roadmap perspective, because you will see that in the guidance document, we foresee at least a full oversight by human and humans at the step of design of the AI or machine learning type of application. This is the reason why in the EASA AI roadmap, we were talking about more autonomous AI and more autonomous machines, considering that there will be several degrees in the characterization of autonomy. As mentioned previously in the discussion on explainability building block, we may be able to cope with level 1 AI without the need for a revolution in our regulations. But as the level of automation are pushed towards certain degrees of autonomy, we have to adapt our regulations. This is what happens in projects dealing, for instance, with enhanced multi-crew or single crew operations. The current regulations, whether for certification, operations, pilot licensing, and air traffic management, will be impacted by such evolutions. It is, in some respect, a parallel activity to the AI roadmap, considering that AI is a major enabler for more autonomous applications and for more advanced automation. Thinking about applications like parcel delivery, for instance, the drones market will most probably push us quickly on the side of even more challenging type of operations, thinking of even level 3B type of applications. And we know that the need for trust from the public in the case of more autonomous machines will be tremendous. So the field of research in AI is extremely dynamic. This is the reason why, after a first guidance development phase and a rulemaking consolidation phase, our roadmap foresees a third phase that we call pushing barriers. The challenges I described so far may already be enough to keep us busy in the next decade, but we are also looking forward to see which new types of AI methods may pop up and possibly make even more complex the equation that we are trying to solve. So this brings us to the end of my presentation. In the attempt to answer this initial question of trust that we can give to an AI application, we have made a few steps already, which brought us to team up with many actors of the EU aviation community. Teamwork is the key word here. On the top level of the certification framework that you can see here, EASA's role in innovation is to anticipate the impact on regulatory and compliance frameworks. This can be done only through teaming up with industry stakeholders and identify use cases that dimension the size of the challenges. And you can see a number of partners we already engaged with on this slide, and the list is expanding every month. And also team up with the research partners. And you can see also the ones we interact heavily today, but in the same way, we are planning a number of other activities here. And the teaming up with the research partners is to understand the state of the art, the barriers, and to define together the necessary research path to overcome these barriers. And you could see that the challenges I described in the last set of slides will require many more use cases than the ones we identified so far, and many more good research papers as well to orient the future means of compliance. Now, focusing on the level of the detailed means of compliance to meet the certification and approval objectives, these are typically developed in the frame of industry standardization working groups, such as the joint EuroCAE SAE working groups, WG114, G34. And we are glad to be participating in this standardization effort. And we are glad also that our partner authorities, like the FAA, are also on board of this joint, and that we managed to make it a joint effort on both sides of the Atlantic. And it helps us getting feedback on the suggested objectives very early in the process and to account for great ideas that are popping up from this group. So to conclude, I would say that the complex reality is that the use of AI and increasing autonomy comes with totally new challenges that I tried to outline here in this presentation, requiring actually brand new mindsets and solutions. Starting with the level 1 AI, we are confident on the possibility to reach an acceptable level of confidence that will ensure safe use of machine learning-based assistance in the near future. And if well managed, such assistance can mean a lot to increasing safety in the cockpits and in the full aviation system. Who would have thought, even 5 years ago, that such an amount of disruptive innovation would knock so rapidly on the door of aviation authorities? Indeed, EASA is not only dealing with AI, but with other disruptive techniques such as blockchain, additive manufacturing, as well as disruptive business models such as the drones market, urban air mobility, and the associated unmanned air traffic management. EASA has organized itself around an innovation network to accompany industry in such promising developments, and we are looking forward to the numerous interesting projects that will make use of these new technologies. I want to thank everyone here for your attention and your interest in the EASA AI roadmap, and I am now glad to answer any question that my intervention may have raised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. It was a very nice presentation. I take a lot of notes from my side.
Thank you.
And so for the question, yeah, it's not on the place where we are recording that we can see them. It's on the Mobility AI platform, the SWAP platform. And also for people who are listening, there is a slight delay between the registration that we are doing in the Zoom platform and what is happening in the forum platform, Mobility AI. So if you ask a question, it may take time for us to answer just because of that. So the first question is from Jean-Jacques Toumazet. It's, as said, mix between rules-based and data-driven techniques will be necessary to set up a robust predictive maintenance concept, especially since few data will be available at the beginning of an aircraft life. How do you see the transition from one technique to another? And yeah, you have the right to say that it's maybe too early to answer.
It's probably too early to answer. I will make an anticipation here, I guess. And no, it's a very interesting question. Now, to be very, very open and honest, as I presented, we have not yet made the move within the scope of work that we defined for the roadmap towards rule-based. We knew it was on the plate from the early days. Expert systems are there for forever, I would say, if we take a step back in the last millennium. But in some way, we see in many presentations and many discussions we have with industry, this promising path of mixing the two. So how will be the transition is indeed too early to say. How we will manage that, I think from early thinking and discussions, we see that rule-based will come with probably similar challenges like data-driven approaches, of course, minus the learning aspect. But of course, if you have an inference engine and you have a set of rules as an entry point, there will be also a need to ensure completeness, representativeness of those rules for the given application. And of course, to ensure a certain intended function of the inference engine. So not simplifying too much in the sense that we are not there yet to really answer the question completely. I think the similarity or the parallel we can draw will help us managing probably the guidance in a parallel way and getting really the benefits of both approaches in the best way.
So yeah, you talk about in your talk about a hybrid approach. Can you just be more specific about what you have in mind there? What kind of hybrid approach you have? Because this is one way of making the transition. I mean. Absolutely,
but of course, not precluding any use case. But one possible hybrid approach would be to encapsulate a machine learning or deep learning model into a set of rule-driven, let's call it state machine or state flow, in which you could take really decisions based not only on traditional inputs to the system, but also on the outputs of the machine learning driven or data driven elements and algorithms.
I see. And another question that from Melanie. I think we can spend an hour on that. Many empirical methods for assessing the quality of the data depends already on ML model. Will you assess those models? So basically, if I understand correctly, this question is machine learning is learning from examples, and the machine is learning by itself. Right, it creates its own rules, its own encoding, and this is very in the opposite of traditional programming. And so, how can you see that we will be able to control anything from the point of view that we are not controlling the learning phase except by given examples?
Yes, that's a great question. I think it draws back to some of the slides I presented and really to this W-shaped assurance process. So the assurance process is really going, it's a method, it's a proposal, of course. It's not meant to prescribe too much the way people will do, but at least it visits those different steps. And to answer the question specifically, the data management step is really the novelty that we have introduced compared to traditional, I would say, software and system development. And there, what the guidance concept paper is bringing is to think in terms of standards that are already existing on the data quality requirements. So how much quality we have in the data set, and pushing really the effort on what we call completeness, representativeness, the fact that we have a complete set of data and that they are representative compared to the, I would say, the operational distribution we are dealing with, or we are anticipating the system to be deployed in. And this is the key driver, I would say, the key words I would use to answer the question. And this drives also the guarantees you can drive for other pieces of the W, and mainly in the learning phase. You control a couple of things in the learning phase, but of course, the guarantees you can get from the learning can depend only on a good quality of data as an entry point.
Okay, definitely. So what is a complete data then?
That's the place where we need definitely this teamwork all together and with research.
I agree.
To be completely open, in The way we've approached it was really based on this use case from the Codan Innovation Partnership Contract, in which, in order to illustrate, I'm not saying this is the only method, to illustrate this completeness, we used this notion of slicing the dimensional, the input space in hypercubes, and trying to provide some guarantees on the statistical coverage, I would say, of this state space. It's, of course, there are limitations in this approach, and that's where we wanted to use it more as an illustration in order then to drive the direction and say, this is what we are looking for. But of course, please come with all the means you have in mind, really from the research field, things we would have not seen today, that will really increase the capability and the power, I would say, of the means of compliance we can put below this completeness and representativeness objective.
Yeah, in fact, from the academic point of view, we are talking about the problem of out of distribution data, meaning data that is not coming from the training set data. And we have to be able to be robust, even if we are in this kind of stuff. And this is something that we call to control bias, and it's related to fairness. And also we need some anomaly detection principle to be able to understand if we are in a situation which is out of the distribution that we have learning. This is what we are trying to do from the academic point of view. But from your point of view, which is much more, you will give the acceptation at the end. Do you think that we can use, because you are really, for example, you have work on avionic problem and things like that. Do you think that there is some physical law that are related to what happened when a plane is flying that might help in order to make a limitation of what kind of data can happen in practice? Because there's a lot of situations which are simply not possible because of the physics laws, right?
Yes,
is
absolutely.
There some direction that you think in that point of view?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. Just before answering that one, I would complement maybe my previous answer, because you mentioned out of distribution and anomaly detection in the data sets, which is what we've pushed more on the representativeness part, and I answered really focused on the completeness. And we are also pushing forward this notion of data distribution discriminator, which I think goes exactly in the direction of what you were mentioning in terms of research. And that's really a complement, let's say, completeness, representativeness. I think it's a matter of definitions. In the different fields, we may have different ways of putting it.
Yeah, of course.
What we try to say is, if we aggregate both of them, this is a part, not everything, but it's a part of the data quality requirements, but it's a huge, important part in order then to provide the guarantees. And this brings me then to answer your specific question on the physical laws. I would say it's extremely difficult to answer because it's totally use case dependent. It depends really what we are talking about. If we think, I guess, applications like icing detection on a wing, for instance, we could think of using data instead of the traditional, let's say, mechanical sensors on the wing in order to characterize the conditions in which the icing is more let's say, probable, or is probable enough so that measures have to be taken by the pilots. And this is where I'm sure that the physical laws are an excellent, let's say, distribution discriminator in some way that will really orient the thinking on the use case and on the data gathering. But there are so many other applications in which I would say the operational space, the concept of operation around it are so diverse that I'm not sure it will help in every use case. Let's put it this way.
No, I think we have, but if we can make some advancement in one particular direction, then this will be. But my second question about that is more about often we have simulators that are quite good, that has been created from a long time, but the simulators are creating artificial data, right? And most of the time we will use them for the learning phase, at least the first step of the learning phase. And how do you think it will be difficult to be sure that what we have learned on simulating data will be good in when we will apply it in the real world?
Yeah, that's another good question. It's I think we have quite some experience with using simulators also in more traditional system and software development. So I think we probably would use similar principles on the representativeness of the simulation environment versus the operational or the environment, the real environment in which the operation will be conducted. I think we would use the same principles. Now, in the case of machine learning, I think that, and per some excellent research papers as well, we can see that this augmentation of the data are actually even a very, very beneficial thing to do. In some way, it helps the model to be even better, even with, I would call it, less representativity in the simulator. So I think our goal on the other side will be to ensure, together with our applicants, that they have first the right amount of real data in the different data sets, and not only from a training perspective, but for sure in the verification ones. And that the usage of the simulation is really driven by considerations on what are we looking for with this simulation credit, and how much, I would say, representativity is there. And if there is not, what is really the real benefit on the training? I think it's what it brings beyond what we are doing today in certification when using simulation for credit. Let's call it for credit. Mm-hmm.
So a roadmap for convincing your agency might be to say, well, you believe that this simulator is good, mm-hmm. and we will show you that the adaptation from simulated data to real data is in our way certified. And this might be a way to convince the European agency. Is it a path that we can try?
You can try any path in the sense that, as usual, the means of compliance are totally left open as long as we meet the objective. So I think it's as usual, you have a certain objective to meet per the guidance, and the concept paper is not yet guidance in the sense that it's not yet rulemaking, but it's an anticipation of those objectives. And for a given objective, you have many possibilities, many ways. So I think this is a practicable way that you described, François, but it's to be seen really on the given use case.
Yeah, sure. But okay, I go back to the question because there are more questions than ever. So Zouar Mahoubi says, can you elaborate on how existing machine learning techniques already used in aviation, such as system identification technique, which rely on flight test data to build models for control law design, will be treated differently or not within this new guideline? So existing machine learning, I was not sure that this is something that has been certified by your agency, but
yeah, I think the question relates to cases maybe where machine learning might have been used upfront, I would say, in the definition of a certain set of conditions for creating a model, and then probably all the machine learning aspects may disappear, and the model just stands and is frozen, but has made probably use of machine learning. I think it's also a case-by-case assessment, and I would not provide any definitive answer on that, but I guess it really depends on how the machine learning is used. And this is this safety, security, of course, but also ethical-based assessments that we have up front. So I guess some of those applications might come into the scope of the guidance. Some may escape just because of the initial trustworthiness analysis assessment. And when I say escape, means could be handled in the way they would be handled today without this new guidance.
Okay, good. Another question is, I think it's in the same direction, but it's something that maybe you will have to specify because it's not something that is clear to me. So Gentile Giacomo says, may you comment on the role of the scenario? And do you see possible to promote an initiative like we have with ASSAM Open Scenario in automotive domain in aerospace? I don't know this scenario, and I'm not sure if you.
I'm not familiar enough with this ASSAM Open Scenario, honestly, to answer. I relate it in my mind to the operational scenarios, which for us in the guidance concept paper are related to the ConOps definition, and those operational scenarios drive then the ODD, the operational design domain, which is borrowed from the automotive. So that might come into this aspect, but honestly, Giacomo, guess we will need to discuss it offline because I'm not
maybe
sure
offline,
I can
yes.
answer.
Okay. So now, okay, Giacomo says an automotive community soft tried to regulate the uncertainty already there in the specification. I think Gentile, yes, that we should do something offline.
But I would answer maybe this one. And when I made the reference to the automotive for the uncertainty evaluation and the quantification, I was thinking also about SOTIF. So this is one of our paths of development to go beyond what we know how to do in aviation today regarding this topic. So this is definitely the path I was thinking about.
Okay, so in totally other direction, but very interesting. It's Schrader that's asked, hybrid rule-based and database technique will allow for one, explainability, and two, backup mode for database if uncertainty is too high. So I think Schrader asked you to give more information of how you can get explainability and I will say out of distribution detection using these hybrid models.
Yes, it's not only focused on hybrid models, but in the explainability building block, there are many things to say, of course, but one of them is we took it off or away from the learning assurance initially, although there is an overlap between the two. The learning assurance creates this data quality, data completeness, representativeness, and of course, this out of distribution discriminator or whatever method is used could be used also to be an ODD monitoring, so the fact to monitor that we stay in the operational design domain. And we have taken this not away, but borrowed then from the learning assurance and pushed it into the explainability building block, because we believe this is an essential key driver for providing explainability in real time, I would say, to an end user. If someone knows and can rely on the guarantees given by the learning assurance to, let's say, for the system to perform as intended in a certain operational design domain, going out of that domain or at the boundaries of that domain, of course, is essential information that needs to be provided, and not sole information needs to be provided with a proper explanation to whoever is the end user, a pilot, an ATCO, that will need then to use this output and this explanation towards him.
Okay, good. And maybe one last question that is coming from your slide. It was very important for you to understand what is the trust point of view. And as I understand it, trust is basically has two different aspects. It's the trust of the public, of the population, that's something that has to be earned. Mm-hmm. But it's also there's also the trust of the science. I mean, scientific person should be convinced that the system is robust and in some way certified, right? And can you see what is the link and the difference between these two different way of seeing the trust?
Yes.
And how you will deal with that in the future?
Sure.
Because it will be your agency that will put the stamp at the end, right?
Yes, absolutely. Only if we are convinced as well. So only if we trust. So it's now. I think this is the place where I would say, I guess, aviation authorities, not only EASA, of course. We are acting as I would call it a proxy to the public for this aspect. So we cannot leave to the public the decision on how good the machine learning model is in a given aircraft. So of course they have to rely on the fact that we do the right decision when we give the certificate to that product or to any other system used in aviation, because it's not related only to aircraft products or flying products. And this is where I think the two are connected. We act as a first gate to create this trust, to trust together with our applicants, to get to the level of trust to certify, and then we release it to the external world. And then we will have to do a lot of work, like safety promotion, for instance, to convince the public that this is something to be trusted when flying in an aircraft, maybe with one pilot, maybe with no pilot, in the decades to come.
Thank you. So we are running out of time. I think we have 2 minutes left, and you asked me you need some time to make some, but before I give you the last word, I will say that for everyone, after the conference, everybody can browse the platform, which will remain open for all the 3 days. So you may continue to ask questions and make some kind of intervention. And also I will say that it's important for you to go and see the 3 tutorials that we propose that are all offline. I will say one is about explainability. So if you are interested in what Guillaume has said about this point during the presentation, I think it will be a good complement. So Guillaume, you have le mot de la fin.
Alors, je prends le mot de la fin. Merci, François. No, thanks to all the audience for the excellent questions. That was really good to deepen a bit some aspects of the presentation. And my message is the same as the previous slide. We need to team up all together. We have really academic applicants or industry and the authorities to work together towards this goal, that is trusting an AI
on vient d'être
application.
coupé.
Thank you, merci.
Désolé.